Ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for us to build the ultimate AMD gaming PC? This thing is going to be ridiculous. Not only do we have the FSR 4 touting RX 9070 XT, but we have a top-end X870 motherboard, and of course, the best of the best, the 9950 X3D CPU. We're going to put all of this stuff together. We're going to put it inside this brand new chassis from APNX, the V2. And then of course at the end, we're going to walk you through exactly what this thing can do and show you those all-important gameplay benchmark numbers so you can see what the very best of AMD is all about. And before anyone starts raising some eyebrows and thinking that this sounds suspiciously sponsored by AMD, it is not. If there's some bad stuff to say, we are going to be saying it. But I thought this would be fun. Do you like fun, or are you boring? Jokes aside though, obviously the whole point of these videos is to be as helpful as possible and to help you find the perfect gaming PC that is right for you. And I would argue that for a lot of people there probably are some parts here that you don't need, maybe some mistakes that you might make by over-speccing or under-speccing certain components. And again, that's kind of the whole point of this really. I want to walk you through all of the pros and cons of all of the decisions so you can find the right stuff that, as I say, is perfect for you. But this video does actually have a sponsor, and it's the case that we have here. This is a brand new one actually from APNX. This is their V2. And you may remember the V1 because we did a full build on this, I think late last year, and it had that really cool wooden edge to it. It looked fantastic. I was genuinely a massive fan of that. I thought it was awesome, but they're going for something a little bit different now. So this being the V2, I think they're still going to sell the two side by side, but this is pretty much like taking inspiration from some other cases, but just trying to double down on it and make it even better, where you have glass on both the front, the side, and the top. But they want you to be able to see more of your components. It's all very well just slapping glass in it, but if it's kind of hidden and you can't see all of your components, I don't want to say it makes it pointless, but obviously the more components you can see through the glass, the better. So they're trying to improve that and then also improve the airflow. So I'm going to put this little spec sheet that they sent over compared to some of its competition, and you can see in terms of temperatures on both the CPU and the GPU, it actually came out very, very well. Obviously it is going to depend obviously what you put inside this, because there's quite a few different configurations. I mean, let's actually open this up, so you can see. Oh, factory tight though. Need my screwdriver. Right, so that's that one. We'll take these two off as well, and then we have our top piece, look, for the top of the chassis, and then the side, I think you have to unclip here, and then unclip from here as well. Obviously, in transit, I think 3 pieces of glass is a bit of a nightmare, which is why you have this little connection piece just to keep everything in check. And then you can almost have a bit of an open frame, but one of the other things that they're doing differently, look, with the V2, is that you have this kind of frame at the top, at the back, so you can still see all of your radiators and things, but you're making the case a little bit shorter, and you're kind of like putting it, well, at the back essentially, and just making more efficient space of what you have available in the chassis. And you can see as well, you've got that classic APNX look where you have that sheet of, I assume that's metal, yeah, sheet of metal, look, that kind of goes all the way down and just gives it a little bit of brand and personality, which is something I quite like. If you look at their coolers or some of their other cases, same sort of elements you'll find in there. But yeah, it kind of looks almost, in a good way, a little bit like a test bench that you've got glass all the way around. So just trying to showcase what you've got. Obviously, if you're making, I don't know a polite way to say this, a $60 gaming PC and you put it in here, probably not going to look fantastic. So it's definitely going to encourage you to spend more money to buy prettier components, let's say. But let's give this a spin around and actually show you what we have at the back, shall we? So we have a mesh panel like that, and then that reveals all of your fan and radiator mounts. So this is obviously where you access them, but your fans and your radiators will be actually in the case itself. You can fit a 360 here or here, and then put a 120 and 120 either side. It's fairly modular, so you can mix it up if you didn't want to go for this exact config, but that's obviously what most people are going to do. Same with the back panel as well. By default, you've got a 140 here, but if you wanted to put like 2 120s or something, if you wanted more airflow at the back, again, you could do that. It's worth noting as well, you do get 3 ARGB fans down the bottom as standard as intakes, and then obviously that one that you get fitted at the back. I think the best way for most people would probably be to use any fans you put here as an exhaust, and then that way you're getting loads of airflow from underneath and chucking out the side. But obviously it depends on your configuration and what you're putting inside it. But I've got to say, I really like the fact that not only does your power supply go here, hard drives here, but this is modular, so you can swap them over. But I love the fact that you have a fan hub that does ARGB and fan speed. Honestly, it makes it so much easier because you don't have to worry about motherboard headers and everything plugs into one place. So it's going to mean that obviously you're going to have a lot of cables. It's not like a system where they all interconnect, but if you are using standard fans and standard connections, it just makes it so much tidier and so much easier to hook up. Really appreciate that. Oh, and then look, there's one more thing I didn't mention as well, which is that you get this really nice stubby GPU holder. I don't like the ones that are just way too big to kind of, well, likely to get caught in fans and things. Just what you want, simple and effective. like that. And I suppose I probably should say as well, you've got USB-C and then 2 USB-A's on the front, and pricing on this, I think it's 140 euros for the white version of this, and then 130 euros for the black. But in terms of USD, GBP, I'll put it here if we have it, but otherwise obviously we'll leave current pricing links to everything globally links down below, so you can check out current pricing on anything used in this video in your region. So that then, ladies and gentlemen, is the case that we're using, but let's now get this build started. And as I say, we're going high end, we're going for X870E, this is the Aorus Pro. Pricing on this is actually fairly reasonable, it's around about £320, £330, which is still a lot of money, and it's more than most people need to spend on a motherboard for a gaming PC, but compared to like the real top end ones that are like 500, 550, you're getting a lot of the features without spending a lot of money. And I always have to time my speech around taking the motherboard out of the bag because it's so loud. But if you're kind of watching a video like this and you're playing out a new build and you're thinking, is it worth spending the extra money on, say, X870 or X870E rather than B850, it all comes down to how much you're trying to maximize bang for buck and what features you need from your motherboard. So this one being X870E, you've got way more bandwidth, so if you're going to use like a PCI Generation 5 or multiple Gen 5 drives, it's going to support more of them. We've got USB 4 on the back of this as well. You can buy other motherboards as well that will have more USB-A's as you tend to like go up the stack, but there's still loads here, so I personally wouldn't worry about that. You can see you've got loads of cooling for the VRMs. You've got very large heatsink if you are going to use a PCI Gen 5 SSD, and then obviously you've got loads of slots down the bottom if you want to add a load more. So personally speaking, I think for my PC, I probably would look at spending around about £300, so something like this would be ideal. But again, if you're trying to maximize bang for buck, so most people watching this would probably be better off going for a B850, maybe like a Strix or like an Aorus Pro or something like that, and then saving £100, £150, $150, and then putting that into a more expensive GPU. But not when we're going for the ultimate AMD build. So let's drop this down on top of our box. We'll open up this top slot for our CPU, and then, as we mentioned earlier, we're going for the best of the best. This is the 9950 X3D. And this does make perfect sense for anyone that is going to use 16 CPU cores for things other than gaming. So if you're doing anything with your PC that's work-related that can take advantage, maybe you're going to be streaming or something at the same time as playing games, anything that you can actually utilize 16 cores, this is going to be the best of the best. However, it does come with some compromises. 3 really. I'd say price, thermals / acoustics, it's going to be louder if you're using this. And then the other one really is the fact that this quite literally shuts off 8 cores when you're playing a game and not using the other cores for anything else. And then it just becomes a 9800 X3D. So if you're buying this because you think, I'm going to get loads more frame rate with the absolute best that AMD has, no. And then there might be some instances that this will be slightly better than a 9800 X3D, but then there's likely going to be loads of instances where a 9800 X3D, without relying on software to shut off cores, is going to perform better. So only buy this if you're actually going to use all of the cores for non-gaming tasks. Going on here. Got cool. The good news really though is that if you are looking at going for an AMD CPU, actually most of them are good options. So alternatively, as I say, 9800 X3D, but a lot of people will be better off going for a 9700X, saving a load of money off your build and actually being able to afford it in the first place, and it's not going to make a massive difference to frame rates. But then also, if you're not going to use this for gaming that often, it's kind of like a side thing, but you do loads of productivity, then the normal 9950X is around about £100 cheaper than this one, and for most people in most games, especially at 4K, is probably going to perform about the same anyway. I hear loads of people go, no, that's not true. What about multiplayer? What about getting 800 FPS in Valorant or something? I mean, that's true, but those are very specific scenarios. And for most people, spending more money on a more expensive graphics card for gaming is going to make sense, whereas obviously for productivity, more cores is usually better. So it's just about working out the perfect CPU and the perfect blend for you personally. Oh, and that was a bit of a ramble, wasn't it? We don't usually go on too much about CPUs, but I think it's so important these days to make sure that you get the right one and don't overspend or underspend. But we can now move on to our memory, our random access. This is a XMP kit, but the one we'll link down below will be Expo, but otherwise is essentially the same. 6000 megahertz if you're willing to overclock it. CL30, 32 gig, pretty much all you need. Obviously you could go for more memory if you need it, and that would make this an even more ultimate AMD gaming PC, but realistically for gaming it's not really going to make any difference at all. But you just want to line these up in slots number 2 and 4, and then just wait for that lovely noise. It genuinely calms me down about 2 notches. It's fantastic. This bit is going to ruffle a few feathers, the SSD. So this is a double-sided heatsink. This is another reason that I wanted to go for this motherboard, but also because this is PCI Generation 5 and should have loads and loads of bandwidth.
Across the board.
Good joke there. Because we're going to use 2 SSDs, and most people watching this should get something like this. It's granted still quite expensive, really. You can buy cheaper ones, but in terms of like all-round SSD, it probably is my favorite. The Samsung 990 Pro, go for a 1 terabyte or 2 terabyte, maybe if you've got loads of files or if your internet speed is slower and you don't want to frequently download stuff. But Samsung have just sent this out, and I didn't really know what sort of build we could put this in other than an ultimate build. So I think this is going to be our best bet, but I can't think of that many scenarios where someone's going to build this exact system and need this. But you tell me, if you're someone that not only needs 8 terabytes of storage, but basically needs the fastest SSD you can get, which is PCI Generation 5, this is going to be the drive for you. But obviously it's very expensive, but if you need something like this, especially for productivity, then you probably already know you need something like this. Overkill for gaming. Oh, and that is dense, isn't it? Look at that. This is the first 8 terabyte drive I've actually used. It's incredible the amount of storage you can get on this. So let's proceed to drop our insane drive into our slot. We'll then replace the heatsink. It's worth noting as well that there's actually 3 more slots for SSDs under this heatsink, and 2 of these are Gen 5. But otherwise, I think we're now pretty much ready to get this inside our chassis. There's just one more thing I like to do, and in this instance, it's actually to open up your CPU cooler and see whether you need to fit this now or change some of the hardware, because this makes it much, much easier. This is actually a brand new one. I think I saw this at Computex this year. It's from Montech. It's called the Hyperflow Digital 360. This is a great way actually to save money on a gaming PC, to go for a Montech cooler, because they're usually relatively cheap and yet still have great performance. And as I say, this one is new. The main difference is that it actually has this little readout on the pump head itself, so you can see the temperatures without having to spend like £200 to £300 on an alternative cooler that has a screen inside it that, don't get me wrong, are very cool, literally, and obviously do have a lot of use, but a lot of people would rather have a better CPU or a better graphics card. This one seems to come pre-attached, which is nice. Will this actually work with what we have though? Yes, that is going to be used as an exhaust, so we won't have to change that around. But then let's have a look at the mounting. Yes, and it does look like we just have these little screws here, so we can fit this now. Just take these nubbins out of the bag, unscrew and remove the default AM5 mount, and then proceed to get those screwy nuts and literally just fit that into those holes. And then, ladies and gentlemen, your motherboard is ready to go in. Just grab your case and lay this down flat. Try not to hold it by the glass though. I'm sure it'd be fine, but it's not worth the risk. Then you can just pick up the motherboard by the heatsink and then just gently lay this over these little standoffs. Look, will click into place. Oh, and then somewhere should be some screws. Ah, they were in the box, look, where they should be. Oh, and look, they've actually taken the time to label stuff. Why do more companies not do this? It's so silly when they don't, and you have to kind of work out what's what, and they all look the same in the instruction manual. Thank you, APNX. But rent aside, let's take the opportunity to get all of these screwed in. Oh, and then once you've done that, we can start to think about cable management, but you can also start to think, you know what, my PC's looking pretty good. It looks like a gaming PC now. But of course, having said that, there is still quite a long way to go. So let's have a look at all of our options. So we've got this little hub here. I think we can remove that if you wanted to access everything behind it. It looks as if it's just 4 screws and then the whole thing is kind of like held in place with these little hooks. So it's not gonna like magically fall out as soon as you take the screws out. But yes, this probably is gonna be a little bit easier for our initial cable management look. I'm also interested in these cables down the bottom, and these are obviously all of the fans that we have pre-fitted. And it looks as if these are actually daisy chained as well. So I think that's just 2 cables to plug in, look, one for ARGB and one for fan speed. So let's get these out and unraveled, and they're quite long actually, so you're not gonna have to worry about length. But now I can start routing everything through, and then I can connect my USB-C and my USB 3, my front panel, and of course my HD audio. With that out of the way, I'm then going to get this hub ready. I'm also going to remove the hard drive cage just to make it easier for cable management. I'm then going to pop our ARGB hub on, but I should note that if you take the hard drive cage out and you don't replace it, then it is going to be a bit wiggly here. I think that's okay because I'm never going to touch it, but I would recommend keeping the hard drive cage in unless you specifically need to remove it. I mean, actually it's going to be easier to do this loose, isn't it? So let's hook up all of our connections to the hub. And then our fan relay is going to connect down here at the bottom of the board. And at this point then, we've now come to the point where we can mount our radiator. And as we know,
I hate radiators.
Only because they seem to take ages, but ever since the advent of them being pre-fitted, it does seem to save you a lot of time. So let's see if this is going to be the case, shall we? Open up our bag of radiator screws, and then this should, all things correct, just mount here at the top, look. I'm going to mount at the side though, because I think this will give it the best ventilation. Then I'm going to remove the plastic cover on the cooler, and this will reveal the pre-applied thermal compound that we don't need to touch and certainly don't want to touch. Then we can remove the Intel bracket, slide on the AMD one, and then just gently lower this over those posts, and then give it a good press and just secure down with these kind of flexi screw thumb screws. Then of course just finish tightening with a screwdriver. Oh, and actually I realise I can have the tubes at the bottom, which is in theory going to be better for longevity. Let's plug in our pump power, which is just a 4-pin fan header. Our addressable RGB is then going to go to our hub. And then finally, we also have a USB to control the Montec LCD. Well, it's not really an LCD, it's a temperature readout. LED. I'm also going to add a couple of extra fans just to fill this out though. These are from APNX. I think these are the FP1s, but you can buy FP2s now. In an ideal world, obviously everything would match, but being RGB, it shouldn't make masses of difference. And you can see that the reason we're putting the fans here and not the radiator is just because some of it is actually covered by this motherboard tray, which doesn't make such a big difference for the fans because they're not as thick, but obviously a fan and a radiator takes up quite a lot of space. So I think this is the best option. Fast forward around about 10 minutes of cable management and screwing, and here we are, hopefully now ready for our graphics card. As you can see, we've got pretty much the complete look, and actually around the back it's nice and tidy as well. Bear in mind the amount of cables we've got going in this, actually pretty impressed so far. But let's see what happens when we add in what is always going to be everyone's favorite component, the graphics card. And I don't think we've used this specific one on the channel yet. This is from ASRock, it's the Tai Chi 9070 XT. This was one I think that went to editor Carl, and he was doing a load of benchmarking on it, so you didn't actually see this at launch, but here it is today. And I've got to say, the 9070 XT is pretty much the best all-round graphics card if you want to save just a little bit of money, because obviously I think the best all-round graphics card is probably the 5070 Ti, just because that obviously has all of the NVIDIA features, 16 gigabytes of VRAM, loads of performance. This has very similar performance. It does trade blows. It usually averages out slightly less than a 5070 XT. 5070 XT? 5070 Ti? But the thing is, this is currently a fair bit cheaper, certainly in Europe and in the United Kingdom, which just makes it an absolute steal and pretty much the best all-round option for people that know they're not really that fussed about ray tracing. And I would also like throw DLSS in there, but now with the advent of FSR4, which is a really good upscaler, trades blows with DLSS, it really is awesome. This just offers kind of more for the money, really. You can always spend more and get more performance or more features, but I think for what most people need, this is such a great all-round option now that the price is right. The reason that it was not difficult to recommend, but difficult to recommend buying at the current price was throughout this year, the price on this was crazy. It was actually going for more than a 5070 Ti, which made no sense. But now that this has come down in price, I think this, as I say, is definitely a steal when it comes to a high-end option. It's not cheap, far from it, but if you don't want to go into silly money, this has got to be up there with the very best. And I mean, I probably should say as well that if you do want to see head-to-head performance between this and a 5070 Ti, we've done that video, you can find it in the top right corner of your screen. That should hopefully help you to find the graphics card that's perfect for you. But installing this should be pretty straightforward. Let's just open up slots 2 and 3. Let's open up. Oh, hang on, I've dropped a screw through the mesh. The mesh was a great idea until you drop a screw in it. It's like a game of Operation. Oh, he's got it, Phew. Oh, this is a triple slot, so better take 3 out. Do not drop the screw. Is this going to fit in? Yes, it is. Loads of room actually for large GPUs. There, we can screw it into place, and then we can hold this up with the GPU sag bracket. And then last, but certainly not least, of course, we're going to need a power supply. And I thought 850 was probably the right amount for this. Obviously, if you want to go for 1000, it's going to give you a little bit more future-proofness because you could put 5090 in this. But in terms of like great all-round options, Power Zone 2, this is a platinum-rated power supply from Be Quiet, and you know it is going to be cool and quiet. So let's take out this modular power supply, and I believe this also comes with PCI Gen 5. Yes, there we are, and it's actually a right-angle cable, which could work for us, or it could quite literally be the opposite thing we need. No, it's the wrong way. Oh no, this literally won't fit on this card because it's too big then. Can it plug in here like that? Yes. Okay, we're fine. Let's plug in all of our connections. Oh, we give this a spin look, and we're going to place this at the top. But again, as a reminder, if you wanted to move things around, you could absolutely put this down the bottom as well. Oh, that cable is going to cause a problem, isn't it? Oh, let's try without for now then. Oh yeah, it will go in quite easy actually once you've done it this way round. So you can just drop this through and then into the main chamber, along with our ATX and then our CPU up here. Then we can connect both of the SATA connections for our ARGB hub, starting with our CPU over here. Then we can connect up our graphics card, and then finishing up with our ATX. They literally just press in like that. All the cables can tuck out the back. And then, ladies and gentlemen, here we are. our finished rig. And to be fair, there's not really that much I would change about this before we've turned it on, other than the power supply. Having that right angle cable just doesn't work with this particular GPU, so it'd be fine obviously if you got a different one, but yeah, it's just a little bit frustrating because it also means that the cable's not quite got enough slack in the current configuration for it to come up from underneath, which I guess would be fine if you had the power supply at the bottom, but yeah, maybe grab a different one. We'll leave links to other PSUs and things down in the description. So that's a little bit messy, but otherwise everything seems to have done quite a good job of kind of disappearing, which is quite nice. Bear in mind that there's so many cables here going on. It definitely looks quite clean. You can't really see cables until you kind of peer over the top. Not sure how likely that is. It's not where I usually look, but be aware you will see the cables at the top, obviously. If you go there and then around the side, I haven't actually pinched these cables back in yet, but you can see in terms of cable management, you've got ample space really. So as long as you're being neat and you've got straps and things that I will say are quite hard to access once you've kind of built this up. I think that the default really should actually have been to have the power supply down the bottom. I think that would have made a little bit more sense, but obviously it's up to you. You get the choice. So let's just tidy these up. Side panel goes on like that, and then we can give this a spin, replace that top piece of glass, do a lot of peeling. We'll grab ourselves a monitor, keyboard and mouse, and of course, you guessed it, the PC Centric mouse mat clearance sale. If you want to grab one, now is the time before they're gone. Check it out with the link down below. But is this going to work? I mean, the money is on, yes. We've got some spinning fans and they're in sync, which you'd expect, obviously from the hub. Looks like they're all connected and plugged in, but until we actually get that signal on screen, I'm always a little bit nervous. Is it going to function? Taken a while, but it's X870E, so it will take longer than a V850 or an Intel motherboard, to be fair. It's thinking about it, it's thinking about it. Oh, we've got some more fans. We've got some more fans. This is promising. I think it's doing its memory training. I hear a click. There it is, ladies and gentlemen. The ultimate AMD PC is ready. It's live. And I've got to say that overall, this is a really quite cool, quirky little system, isn't it? It does stand out. It's got its own personality. It doesn't just copy everything else. And I really like that because obviously cases are boxes and they're difficult to do things a little bit differently. But I like that you've got lots of flexibility. I like the fact that you have those two fans fitted down there as standard. For most people, as long as you don't necessarily need all of the spaces at the back to be populated, you'd be good to go straight out of the box. But obviously for best results, you do want it to look like this. Complaints are pretty much just going to be that out of the box, it would have been nice if all of those cables were actually pre-fitted to the ARGB hub. I don't really understand why they're not. That would save every builder about 10-15 minutes of time, which would have been nice. The Montec cooler, so far, looking really nice. Obviously the fans don't match, but one of these tubes, or both of them really, are just a little bit too short to be really attractive, which is annoying. Then obviously the power supply with that kind of weird cable situation. I like what they were trying to do with the right angle, but it's not gonna work with a lot of graphics cards, so I think playing it safe would have made more sense. But yeah, it's pretty cool. And as I said, pretty quirky, but should we see how it performs? I mean, let's first tune our fan so it's not making a load of noise when it doesn't need to. Then we'll enable XMP, save and exit. And then you can install a copy of Windows, which is really easy. We've done a full guide on this. You can find this in the top right corner of your screen. Oh, and ladies and gentlemen, indeed, here we are, all set up and ready to go. And you've probably noticed I've got a fresh t-shirt on. It's because I took a weekend off. Can you believe it? We're all set up and ready to go now. Everything's downloaded. And I've just run a test on this SSD as well. Again, I'm not going to recommend this for every gamer out there because it is ridiculously overkill. But indeed, the results are overkill as well. So almost the full fat 15 gigabytes a second, not gigabits, 15 gigabytes a second. But obviously if you're building this for productivity as well and you're doing anything that really will utilize that speed, then fantastic. You know, it is going to make sense, but for most people probably just stick with a Gen 4 drive like the 990 Pro or ones from other brands. So it's not sponsored by Samsung. The PC itself looks absolutely fantastic though, and I have actually gone and got our little software installed. It is really lightweight actually. From Montec, and then obviously this shows you the temperatures and utilization and things like that. I will say that it's not particularly in depth. I mean, it's not like one of these proper LCD ones with a 60 Hertz display where you can put a load of GIFs and videos and things on it. But for what I personally would use it for, this is ideal because that's all I use mine for anyway. But obviously your mileage will vary. But if you're gonna go for a presentation case like this, I think it's really well executed. But anyway, enough gassing, enough talk. Let's press on to our gaming action. And this is the default settings. We'll have a look at what these are in just a second. But as you can see, Black Myth Wukong getting around about 170 to 175 FPS or so. So for what most people want, you're gonna be able to get something that's not only gonna look incredible, but still have a very high frame rate. There are gonna be loads of of settings that we can turn up, but just because you can turn them up doesn't mean you need to. So let's go and have a look and see what we have at our disposal, shall we? So indeed, at the moment, we are running this at 4K. I imagine it's using FSR. Yes, it is using FSR. We've got frame generation, but this seems to be in Chinese. Translate thinks it's automatic or closure. I'm going to go with closure. And then when we go down, we can see that our graphics preset was actually set to high. So let's turn this all the way up to very high. And then we'll come out of this, and then let's have a look. So this is FSR, and I don't believe this is FSR 4. So you are likely to see a little bit more artifacting around the character, which is definitely way more noticeable than it would be with FSR 4, but obviously if you're playing at 4K, then you do want to use FSR because it's not going to be as noticeable as if it was like 1080p or 1440, and in this game you can kind of set the exact scale yourself. So here it's literally upscaling 1080p to 4K, but you can set the slider to whatever it is that you want. So this sort of game, I'd say around about 100 FPS is probably what I'd aim for. But let's see what happens if we turn our resolution up. And restarting from the checkpoint, it looks as if we have dropped now to around about 70 frames a second or so. I mean, 64 actually, it's gone down slightly there. So again, it's all about what's going to work best for you. I mean, obviously, if you're going to want to play games at, as we said, at absolute max settings, have like full path tracing and everything enabled, you're going to have to go higher end. But for what most people need, this is still going to be overkill. I mean, I think a lot of people would have been happy to have it at the high preset, and obviously have it at that default where you're getting 170 frames a second or so, but it's still a card that you can turn pretty much all of the settings up, really. I think it's only full ray tracing that really is going to kind of throw this off. And again, remember, this is at 4K. If you're playing or outputting really at 1440, then you're going to get an even higher frame rate. But let's have a look if we can break this, basically. Even on all of the NVIDIA graphics cards, this kind of tanks the FPS as well. And we did need to restart the game in order to get the changes to take effect, and I'm going to be honest with you, this is pretty dreadful. We're getting around about 40 frames a second, but the game feels way lower than that. I think it's just one of those things with latency that unless you're measuring, you might not necessarily know what was going on here, but it's clearly just that the GPU is having to do so much that the actual time it takes to render a frame doesn't always line up with the frame rate that you would expect. So despite the fact that we are getting 45 frames a second, the way that the game feels is pretty ratty, to be honest. This is better from AMD, no doubt about it, but if you want the absolute top-end path-traced ray tracing, then NVIDIA is your best bet. But honestly, if you want full path tracing, I'm going to say wait for the next generation anyway, because hopefully those cards will perform a fair bit better, because even the NVIDIA cards still have a fair bit of way to go. So yeah, I think it's fair to say that Black Myth is pretty much about as intense as it gets. Full path tracing, loads of foliage, hard to use upscaling for, but then most of the games you're going to be playing, you're going to get a very different experience. So this doesn't have ray tracing, but this is still the absolute highest preset, 4K, and thankfully this actually supports FSR 4. This is The Last of Us Part 2, and it's awesome. I mean, the game itself, you know, like the story, I did enjoy it, but I preferred the first one. Let's just leave it at that, no spoilers. But yeah, you can see we're getting around about 130 FPS, and with FSR 4, the image quality is just so good. This is actually set to the performance mode, and if I didn't tell you that, I don't think you would know. So anyone that like actively hates upscaling, FSR, DLSS, well, you tell me, and I'll try and break this the absolute best I can, of where the artifacts and where the problems with this image are. So again, this is outputting at 4K and it looks pin sharp, and I'm kind of trying to break it. Realistically, you should kind of be looking around the edges of the hair and things, and you can just about make out like a tiny bit of moire around there. But I mean, it's a night and day difference versus what we saw in Black Myth, even at the same input resolution. So the technology is awesome. This is the main benefit really of going for a 90 series card over a 7000 Radeon GPU. And yeah, it's awesome. These are the exact settings I would choose to play. This is very high at 4K. And yeah, over 120 FPS. But obviously the caveat is that not all games support FSR 4, but hopefully in the future that will change. Oh, but ladies and gentlemen, the time has come to actually get on to our multiplayer game, and today we're looking at Apex Legends, and they've actually added a new mode. I haven't played this before. This is Team Deathmatch. I say new, I'm gonna look silly if this has actually been out for ages, but I mean, I haven't played Apex Legends properly since just after COVID, so I mean, we're going back a little bit there. But you can see this is running at just under max settings. I think Sun, Spot, Shadows is set to very high rather than Ultra. But other than that, everything is set to the absolute max, and there's no upscaling in this, and we're running this or outputting this at the full 4K resolution, so around about 240 FPS. Bear in mind as well that this is a 240 FPS monitor. The experience is super slick. It's OLED as well, so we're not like worrying about loads of blur when we're moving the camera. This is pretty much as good as it gets, unless you want to step down to 1440 and you can go for like 500 FPS, 500 Hertz. But to be honest with you, I think for most people that's absolutely overkill, and that the benefits really of the extra resolution are probably going to outweigh the benefits of that extra refresh rate once you're over 240 FPS. Obviously, below that, probably not the case, but yeah, it's all about trade-offs really. But you can see this is a really slick experience. Quickly before the game ends, let's have a look at our temperatures. Around about 60 degrees on the GPU and about 65, 67 or so on the CPU. So absolutely nothing to worry about there whatsoever. But again, it's going to vary depending on the game that you're playing, and obviously the exact situation and also the tuning. And I have done like a entry level tune. Like, I think I could get this a bit quieter, but very, very quiet. Not like completely silent. Again, if you went for a 9800 X3D, I think this would be quieter overall, but I don't think anyone is going to have an issue with this whatsoever because it's not in any way loud really. But other than that, I think that's pretty much everything you need to know. Let us know your thoughts on this enclosure, and let us know your thoughts on the ultimate AMD gaming PC. Have I done this properly? Have I cut corners? Have I missed things? I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. And as always, if you do want to check out current pricing on anything that was featured in this, because it changes a lot, you can find everything listed down below in the description or with a pinned comment. But smash the like button if you've enjoyed this. It really helps out. Get yourself subscribed, and we'll catch you in the next one.